In this video, I'd like to look at React, and what the page is going to do is have a drop-down list with some book titles in it, and then when the user chooses a book, it's going to display other information and maybe the cover of the book. So the code for this can be found at the URL seen here, and it looks like this. So there's a bunch of anatomy books I got from Dover Books, and you pick a book and it shows you the cover of the book, the author, the ISBN, the number of pages, the price, and so on. And there are different books. I'm just showing the console here. It's telling me I'd be better off sort of downloading instead of working with the CDN. I'll show you I'm working with the CDN, and I'm also using Babel. And if I were going to go to development, the Babel helps me to write. We're going to have React create HTML, and Babel lets me write in JavaScript, in React, make the code that's going to write the HTML look more like the HTML that it's going to write. That's the job of Babel. But it's we should sort of take it out of the equation if we were moving toward development. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not really moving this towards development, but there we have it. Okay. So what do I have in this folder? I have an HTML file, a CSS file, a JavaScript file, and a bunch of image files. So that's what I'm sort of serving up. Okay, so I'm going to close that Explorer, make a little bit more room. Okay. So again, here is the URL for this code, the zipped up with all the different files. I have a title. I have a link to my style. I have connections to React 18, React DOM 18, and the Cloudflare, which is the Babel, which is the JSX. So I'm working by CDN, so I'm not downloading local versions of these libraries. I am not using like a node, and then node packet manager or anything, or package manager. Okay. So the main thing other than the connection to the CDNs, I have a div where I'm going to load up everything. So all of that you saw was loaded up in a div. All there is in pure design is just a div, and then a connection to the script. Okay. The CSS is fairly boring. Colors, inline block for the span, and some image padding. Okay. So the span, the span is these. They're sort of serving like labels, so that could have just as well been a label. Give it an inline block size and a definite width. So that's what helped these things line up. Okay, so that's enough CSS, that's enough HTML. Let's dive into the JavaScript. Okay, so I'm making a class that extends my React component class, and React keeps evolving. So I'm going to say some things, they might be more about old React than new React. I'm not sure. I haven't tested the waters completely, but at least it used to be, and maybe it still is, that your class name should be capitalized. And so that's what I'm used to now. So I will make sure that I stick with that. Okay. So I'm going to define a React component, and then let me collapse that. And then I'm going to set up a root div book display. That was the ID in the HTML. So sometimes I'll say document get element by ID div book display, but this time I decided to use the query selector with the pound sign or the hashtag, and that is grabbing something based on its ID. So that's just a different way than document get element by ID. I don't know anything about efficiency. I'm just showing different ways of doing it. but establish the create the root, and then use that root to render the book, my book display, which was, again, the name of the class. And so the class is extending a React component, and so it's sort of treated as if it were a tag, effectively. Okay. So this big long thing is a lot of the data. The data is, so this big long expanse is mostly data. Okay, so I have the constructor. I'm going to get whatever I inherit plus a little bit more. So I'm going to add to whatever I inherit from component. I'm going to add a state. And I'm going to have an index for the book. So in the drop-down list, there will be a value that I pick, and that's going to be, I'm going to end up with an array of objects, and the value, the value of my options are going to be indices of that array, and then the value of the select will be the selected index. So I'm going to start that off, the book index at 0. So be, in a sense, in this example, pre-selecting one when we're ready to go, the first book. Okay, here is my array of books. So books, colon, so the state is sort of an object, and we're setting it up sort of using a JSON format. So key value pairs. And so books is one of the properties, and a colon, and then its value is an array. I can know that by the square bracket, and it's an array of objects. So the things within the square brackets are in curly brackets. So it's an array of objects. And then there are these key value pairs: book title, book author, book ISBN, etc. The information about the book, including these image files. Okay, and then I have a number of such books. So I have a number of books. I can, in Visual Studio Code, collapse that. So those are my two properties, the book index and the books. Okay. Then I have a method for the user using the change event. So this handles the change event of the drop-down select. So, and this does very little. I'm not writing here in this, change the picture, show the information. I am just saying set when the user changes the dropdown, I'm going to get the value of the dropdown, and I'm going to make that the book index. So the book index was part of this state. So this is the object. I'm using a fat arrow here in the definition of this method handle change. I'm working by sort of a fat arrow notation. And the nice thing about fat arrow, it doesn't claim the word this. And so the word this here refers to the object of the class, and it has a state, and the state has, I can set the state, and here I'm just changing not the full state, but I'm changing a property of the state, which I can also do with set state. So I'm changing the book index property to event.target.value. And it's giving me some indication here that something's deprecated, but I think that is a little bit of confusion between React and Node. And I don't think I brought in any extensions to deal with React. So I think this is legit React, but Node's complaining. Anyway, I'm just going to, it works, so I'm going to let it go. Okay, so in the handle change, I set the book index. In render, this is where I'm making my page. So here's my return of render. I'm putting everything in this sort of React fragment, sort of, I don't know, I'll call it like a fake div, because we want to return just one thing. And I'm returning within there, I have a header. Here's my drop-down select. Its value, the value of the select is the book index, which belongs to the state. So this .state.book index. And the change of the select is connected to the handle change of the class. And now the state has an array of objects. So I'm using this .state.books, which is an array. I'm using map, which is effectively a loop over that array. And then book is an element of the array, and I is the index, and I'm creating options. The values are the index I. React likes you, especially when you iterate through things, to have these things called keys to sort of make everything distinct. And so I'm making it book plus I, so they'll all be distinct. Between the open option and the close option, I am adding all the book titles. So here's the beginning and end of the map. Here's the beginning and end of the map in purple. This is the sort of steps within the map. Here's the beginning of the select. Here's the end of the select. So that's all the drop down. I had a break. Here's my image. The source of the image is this .state.books. Books is an array. I'm doing this .state.book index. So I'm picking out the selected book. And then I am using the book cover for the source of the image. The author. So here's my sort of label, if you will, but I just use spans of author. And that was this .state books, which is an array, and then this .state.book index, which is the index of the array. And now I have an object, and I'm using the book author property. And then just down, book ISBN, book page number, book price to fixed. I'm just displaying information. There's the end of my React fragment. There's the end of my return, my render, my class. And we've already looked at sort of the easiest but most important part, add an object of the class to the page, or it was all for naught if you don't do that. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. The main new things were sort of this elaborate state with this array of objects, and using that array of objects to load up a drop-down select. And then the handling of that seems simple because all the real work is down here as we're making the page is based on the state. So I don't have all this code here in the handle. The code's really down here when I'm creating the state, when I'm creating the page. It's dependent on the state. Okay. Thanks for your attention.